Welcome back, constant readers. We here at the Stephen King Book Club are celebrating this ominous October with a bracket-style book battle to see which novel by Stephen King will reign supreme. During the first weeks of October, we asked you to vote on 32 different matchups. Basically all of Stephen King's novels, including a few novellas, who were moved up from the minor leagues. And with all of these books randomly matched up, we are ready to reveal the book battle results of Round 1. First up, King's hard case crime novel, Later, went up against Sleeping Beauties, co-authored by his son Owen. This was a close one, but it was lights out for Sleeping Beauties. So we'll see Later in Round 2, as it earned 53% of the votes. The long-lost Richard Bachman book, Blaze versus Rose Madder, and Blaze goes up in flames. Rose Madder wins with 70%. Here's another nose-to-nose matchup. Dark Tower No. 5, Wolves of the Calla, sends this Lovecraftian-inspired novel, Revival, packing. So the Dark Tower book wins, but just barely with 52%. And now we have the first Dark Tower novel, The Gunslinger, in a showdown with the middle book of the Bill Hodges trilogy. And Finders Keepers joins The Losers and the Weepers. The Gunslinger is triumphant with 68%. But this next Bill Hodges book is in a head-to-head collision with Gwendy's Button Box, a book King co-authored with Richard Chizmar. And this is a regular hit-and-run incident with Mr. Mercedes driving away with 79% of the votes. Now this random matchup doesn't seem so random because we've got two books. Both of them are about a man who gets lighter and lighter and lighter. But Elevation is too light on the votes, so Thinner is a winner, 87-13. So far, the Dark Tower books have been chugging along in this competition, but that train stops here as the massive epic It gobbles up 85% of the vote, sending the Wastelands down the drain. For me, some of these are tough. Case in point, I admire Bag of Bones and Desperation about equally. So for me, this one would be a difficult choice, but not so for our book club members. Desperation digs deep with 61% of the votes, so that Bag of Bones doesn't have a ghost of a chance. And guess what? We have the same sort of outcome for Dreamcatcher versus Duma Key, 61-39%. And in this case, who won? Sorry, Duma Key. Dreamcatcher and those god-awful shitweasels win the day. And oh my gosh, it's another 61-39 split with the sequel to the Talisman versus King's epic Under the Dome. With only 39% of the vote, Black House withers up and dies, and the sci-fi tale Under the Dome overcomes with 61%. Here's another Bachman book that outlasts a mid-career King novel. The Running Man outpaces From a Buick 8, crossing the finish line with 63% of the votes, sending the Buick back to whatever twisted dimension it came from. Gwendy's Final Task, the last in a trilogy co-authored by Chizmar and King, takes on the last Castle Rock novel, Needful Things. This one wasn't even a competition. Leland Gaunt kicked Gwendy out of his shop, and Needful Things dominated with 95%. It seems these earlier novels often have an edge. Let's see how this plays out with The Dead Zone from 1979 versus The Langoliers from 1990. This airplane thriller takes a nosedive, earning a lackluster 33% to the substantial 67% of the dead zone. I should have seen that coming.
The ice is gonna break!
Ooh, and here we go. One Dark Tower book against another. Wizard and Glass, Book 4 of the series, and The Wind Through the Keyhole, a tale that was published after the Dark Tower finale, something to place in between books 4 and 5. And it looks like our book club prefers Wizard and Glass, as it shatters the competition with 78% of the votes. As we move on, there is yet another Dark Tower book in this October Octagon, Song of Susanna versus the 2019 novel The Institute. Well, there's no kidding around here. It is close, but The Institute wins with 59% of the votes. So we say goodbye to Book 6 of the Dark Tower. Up next is a dogfight between Cujo and the final Dark Tower novel, Book 7. Simply named The Dark Tower. So many people love this genre-bending series, but more people seem to love that rabid Saint Bernard because Cujo takes a bite out of the competition, chomping off 65% of the votes. Next up, Salem's Lot versus Insomnia. If you're going to take on vampires, you would think that it would be helpful to stay awake all night long, but it didn't help this sleeper hit, Insomnia, as it falls prey to Salem's Lot, with a bloodbath score of 18 to 82. Now we have The Outsider versus The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon. And just like poor Tricia McFarlane gets lost in the woods, this little book loses its way, and The Outsider snatches a victory with another 61 to 39 split. Here, the finale of the Bill Hodges trilogy has an appointment with the sequel to The Shining, Dr. Sleep, who euthanizes the competition, putting an end to End of Watch with 85% of the votes. Up next, we have two very different works, a novella-sized nostalgic drama and a bizarre supernatural massacre of a novel, The Body versus The Regulators. And probably because so many of us love Stand By Me, The Body hits The Regulators like a locomotive, and it takes home 75% of the votes. It is old versus new with this round, King's debut novel, Carrie, versus the hitman-turned-author thriller, Billy Summers. The 1976 book beats the 2021 novel by 90%. Don't mess with the prom queen, Mr. Summers. This isn't the first time she has totally destroyed someone named Billy. Here we have the serialized novel, The Green Mile, going up against another supernatural drama, Lisey's Story. Mr. Jingles will be delighted to know that The Green Mile lit up with 88% of the votes. Sorry, Lisey, and yes, for the record, Mr. Jingles is still alive. I'm pretty sure that's canon. Next up, fantasy adventure, co-authored by Peter Straub versus what many argue is King's darkest horror novel. And apparently, the book club likes it darker because Pet Sematary absolutely buries the Talisman, 80 to 20%. Yikes. And get ready for a similar takedown as Firestarter enters the cage with Holly. And again, it looks like readers prefer Old School King because Firestarter torches the competition. Holly loses and her percentage is the number 19. I have been waiting for those digits to pop up. Next up, Cell versus The Long Walk. Now, full disclosure, I've made way too many videos about The Long Walk, so I hope it at least makes it past the first round. And I am not disappointed. The Long Walk punches the ticket of that other book, earning 77%, while Cell loses its reception, earning only 23%. Another hard case crime novel, Joyland, goes up against the suspenseful, character-driven Dolores Claiborne. Joyland might be a thrilling ride, but it is eclipsed by Dolores, who wins with 76% of the vote. Moving on, we have The Dark Half versus 11/22/63, a twisted tale of an evil doppelganger pitted against King's time travel adventure. And since the latter is one of my favorites, I am pleased to report that 11/22/63 snipes its adversary, winning 60-40. As fantastical as Eyes of the Dragon may be, there are more book club members who are #1 fans of Misery. So Annie Wilkes vanquishes the dragon, and we have a Misery victory with 79%. Did you think we were all done with Dark Tower books? Well, I cry your pardon. The drawing of the 3 is in a shootout with everyone's favorite killer car, Christine. And that Plymouth Fury runs the gunslinger off the road, winning 66% of the votes. Fairy Tale is actually the only Stephen King novel I have yet to read. So when this book went up against Gerald's Game, I didn't vote on this one, but lots of other people did, and this Eclipse companion to Dolores Claiborne put that fairy tale to bed. Gerald's Game wins with 65%. The Shining versus the Tommyknockers? Which one gets a knockout? For most of us, it is no surprise that King's masterpiece, The Shining, smashes the competition, but there were still a few lovers of the sci-fi horror Tommyknockers that it got a little bit of love. Still, The Shining wins 88-12. And now, one last book battle for round 1. Remember I said that some of the novellas rose from the ranks of the minor leagues? Well, one of those powerful little books is Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption, a work made especially famous in no small part to one of the finest film adaptations, and so Shawshank is going up against one of the longest Stephen King books ever written, The Stand. Now, some book club members told me that this was unfair to pit these two against each other, but we did it anyway, and in a feverish frenzy of voting, The Stand remains standing, and it's back to solitary for Shawshank, with a final score of 74-26. And that, constant readers, is round 1 of our book bracket battle. As of mid-October, round 2 is currently happening in the community posts. So, if you'd like to add your vote, I will include a link in the description so you can help your favorite Stephen King book survive the next battle. May the best book win. And as always, thank you for watching and listening to the Stephen King Book Club.